My name is Elena Sterling. I am 32 years old and formerly a managing partner at one of the most aggressive venture capital firms in New York City. Now, I am professionally listed as a philanthropist and housewife. My husband told me he was flying to San Francisco for the most important meeting of his life. He asked me not to call him so he could focus. I found him 3 hours later at a 3-Michelin-star restaurant in Manhattan, holding hands with a 23-year-old Instagram model named Sophie. I did not scream. I did not make a scene. I simply pulled out my phone, logged into our banking app, and canceled his black card right before the check arrived. But before I tell you how I left him penniless and humiliated in front of the entire restaurant, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind a man exactly who paid for the suit he is wearing. It was a Tuesday morning when the performance began. The sunlight was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Tribeca penthouse, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Liam stood by the door adjusting his silk tie in the mirror. He looked impeccable. He was wearing the charcoal Armani suit I had bought him for his birthday last month, and his hair was styled to perfection, giving him that sharp, successful tech CEO look that the magazines loved to feature beside headlines about innovation and future billionaires. He turned to me, a tight smile plastered on his face, and kissed me on the forehead. It was a dry, perfunctory kiss, the kind of kiss you give a distant relative, not the woman who built your empire. "I have to go, Elena," he said, checking his Rolex, specifically a Submariner that cost more than my first car. "The investors in San Francisco are expecting me by 5. This Series B funding is everything. If I nail this pitch, the company valuation hits 9 figures. I reached out to straighten his lapel, trying to catch his eye, but he was already looking at his phone. Always looking at his phone. "I can have Thomas drive you to JFK, I offered. My voice sounded small even to my own ears. I had become so used to making myself small, so he could feel big. "No." He snapped a little too quickly, then softened his tone almost instantly. "No need, babe. The company arranged a car. It is already downstairs waiting. You just rest. You have that charity gala planning to do, right? Do not worry about me, and listen, do not call me until tomorrow. Okay, I need absolute focus to prep on the flight, and the time difference is going to be a killer." I nodded, swallowing the lump of unease in my throat. "I love you, Liam. Good luck." "Love you too," he mumbled, and then the heavy oak door clicked shut behind him. The sound echoed in the massive, empty apartment, leaving me alone with the silence. I walked to the window and watched him exit the building. A black SUV was waiting. He didn't look up. He didn't wave. He just slid into the back seat, and the car merged into the chaotic morning traffic of New York City. I sighed and turned back to the living room, intending to clear away his breakfast plate. That was when I saw it. Sitting on the marble console table by the entryway was his LeatherTech organizer. It wasn't just a bag. It contained the specific high-speed charger for his MacBook Pro and the backup hard drive with his pitch deck. Liam was obsessive about his gear. He never went to a meeting without that drive. He claimed the cloud was not secure enough for his proprietary algorithms. Panic flared in my chest. Not suspicion, just worry. He could not pitch without that drive. I grabbed the organizer and my phone, immediately dialing Thomas, our family driver, who had been with my father for 20 years and was now effectively my personal detail. "Thomas," I said breathlessly, as soon as he picked up Liam, "forgot his hard drive. I need you to bring the car around. We have to chase him down before he gets to the terminal. Which airport is he flying out of, JFK or Newark there?" Was a pause on the other end, a long, heavy pause that made the air in the room feel suddenly thin. "Ms. Elena," Thomas' voice was low, hesitant. "I am looking at the tracking on the company account. The car Mr. Liam requested did not go to JFK or Newark." I frowned, gripping the leather case tighter. "What do you mean?" "Where did he go?" "He had the driver drop him off in Midtown," Thomas said quietly, "at 155 West 51st Street. My blood ran cold. I knew that address by heart. Every wealthy person in New York knew that address. It was Le Bernardin, one of the finest seafood restaurants in the world, a place where lunch reservations were harder to get than a meeting with the president. and certainly not a place one goes before a 6-hour flight to California. "Thank you, Thomas," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Bring the car around anyway. I am going out." I hung up and stood there in the middle of my living room, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. 5 years ago, I would have destroyed him for this. Back then, I was Elena the Shark. My father had left me the Sterling Trust, and I had multiplied it, making a name for myself in a male-dominated industry. I was ruthless, brilliant, and untouchable. Then I met Liam. He was a charming, ambitious nobody from Ohio, with a dream of a tech startup and holes in his shoes. I fell for the hunger in his eyes. I fell for the way he looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. So I did the unthinkable. I stepped back. I became the silent partner, the loving wife. I funneled millions from my trust into his company, strictly through shell corporations, so his ego would not be bruised, so he could believe he was a self-made man. I bought this penthouse. I paid for his wardrobe. I used my connections to get him into the right rooms. I made myself small so he could be the giant. And now the giant was lying to me. I walked over to the iPad on the coffee table. My hands were shaking, but my mind was beginning to clear. The sadness was evaporating, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Liam thought I was just a housewife who spent her days at the spa and shopping for flower arrangements. He thought I was technologically incompetent because I let him set up the smart home system. But he forgot one thing. We were on the same family sharing plan for our Apple devices. He never bothered to log out, because why would he hide anything from his clueless wife? I opened the Find My app. The little dot representing Liam's iPhone was not at JFK. It was not on a plane. It was pulsing steadily right in the heart of Midtown, exactly where Thomas had said I went to my closet. I did not put on the floral dresses Liam liked. I reached for a black structured blazer, a pair of dark sunglasses, and a wide-brimmed hat. I looked in the mirror. The sad wife was gone. The shark was back. 20 minutes later, I walked into Les Bernardins. The maitre d' looked up, ready to turn me away, as they were fully booked. But then he saw me. He saw past the sunglasses. "Miss Sterling." He whispered, his eyes widening. "I haven't seen you in months." "I need a table, Henri," I said quietly. "Somewhere discreet. Somewhere I can see the whole room, but no one can see me, and do not announce me." He nodded, understanding immediately. He led me to a private alcove, partially obscured by a decorative glass partition. It was the perfect vantage point, and there they were. Liam was sitting at a center table, the best table in the house. The table I usually reserved for my father's birthday. He was not alone. Across from him sat a girl who couldn't have been more than 23. She had long blonde hair, endless legs, and was wearing a dress that cost more than Liam's parents' house back in Ohio. I recognized her immediately. It was Sophie, an Instagram influencer with 2 million followers who posted mostly about bikinis and luxury travel. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to watch. Liam was laughing, a carefree, genuine laugh I hadn't heard in years. He signaled the sommelier. The wine arrived. It was a bottle of Chateau Margaux, 2015. My favorite wine. The wine we drank on our honeymoon. It cost $2,000 a bottle, and he was pouring it for her. I took out my phone and activated the voice recorder, sliding it slightly closer to the edge of the alcove. The acoustics in the restaurant were excellent, and their voices drifted over to me, clear as day. "You are amazing, Liam," Sophie cooed, reaching across the table to stroke his hand. "I can't believe you did all this for me. But what about her? Does she suspect anything?" Liam took a sip of the wine, swirling it in the glass arrogantly. "She suspects nothing," he scoffed, "the old ball and chain. She is probably knitting or watching soap operas right now. She is clueless." Sophie totally checked out. My hand gripped the linen napkin so hard my knuckles turned white. "Old clueless," Sophie giggled, taking a bite of her lobster. "But she is still your wife, Liam. When are you going to leave her you promised?" "Soon, babe," Liam said, leaning in his voice, dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Wait until the IPO next month." Once the company goes public, I will be worth millions on my own merit. I won't need her connections or her family's dusty money anymore. I have the lawyers drafting the papers already. I am going to blindside her. She signed a prenuptial agreement, but my lawyers found a loophole. She won't get a dime of my company earnings. And that villa in the Hamptons, I am taking that too. It is going to be our summer house. Sophie squealed with delight, clapping her hands. Oh, I love the Hamptons. I can already see myself doing a photo shoot by the pool. She is so boring anyway. She probably doesn't even appreciate a man like you. She is a dead weight, Liam said coldly, cutting into his steak. She holds me back. She thinks she helped me build this company, but she just stood in the way. I need someone young, someone vibrant, someone who matches my status. Like you. I sat there frozen. The pain was physical, like a knife twisting in my gut. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to destroy me. He was planning to steal the house I bought with my mother's inheritance. He was planning to erase my existence and replace me with this child. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. This was not the time for tears. This was the time for war. He thought he was a self-made man. He thought the money in his account was his. He thought the black card in his wallet was a symbol of his power. He was about to learn a very painful lesson in economics. I looked down at my phone. I opened the American Express app, the Platinum Centurion card specifically. The card ending in 4098. The card that was currently paying for that $2,000 bottle of wine. It was a supplementary card attached to my main account. My finger hovered over the freeze card button. I watched Liam raise his glass for a toast to us, he said. To the future. To us. Sophie smiled, clinking her glass against his. I pressed the button. The screen flashed, account suspended. Reported as stolen. I sat back and signaled Henri the maitre d'. He came over instantly, his face concerned. Miss Sterling, can I get you anything? Yes, Henri, I said. My voice calm, steady and colder than the ice in the champagne bucket. I would like a glass of water, and please tell the waiter, servicing table 4, that the gentleman's payment method has been flagged for fraud. Instruct him to decline it loudly. And Henri, yes, madame. If he tries to use another card, tell him all cards linked to the Sterling Trust have been frozen. Henri looked at me, then at Liam, then back at me. A small, knowing smile touched his lips. Understood, madame. Consider it done. I watched as Liam waved for the check, his face flushed with the arrogance of a man who thinks he owns the world. He pulled out the black card, the metal glinting in the soft light, and dropped it onto the tray without even looking at the bill. I took a sip of water and waited. My heart was no longer racing. It was beating a slow, steady rhythm of revenge. The show was about to start. The dinner had reached its inevitable conclusion. The waiter cleared away the remnants of the chocolate soufflé and the empty bottle of Chateau Margaux, leaving only the pristine white tablecloth between my husband and his mistress. Liam leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over the backrest, the other hand toying with the stem of his water glass. He looked like a man who owned the world, or at least a man who owned the building. I watched from my secluded alcove, hidden behind the decorative frosted glass partition. My heart was no longer racing. It had settled into a slow, heavy rhythm, like a war drum expecting the command to march. I took a sip of my sparkling water and unlocked my phone. The screen glowed softly in the dim, romantic lighting of the restaurant, illuminating the banking app I had opened 5 minutes ago. Check, please. Liam called out, snapping his fingers slightly. It was a vulgar gesture, something I had tried to train out of him years ago, asking him to be more polite to service staff. But clearly, without me there to polish his rough edges, he had reverted to his true nature. The waiter, a dignified man named Charles who had served my father for decades, approached with the leather bill folder. He placed it discreetly on the table. Liam didn't even open it. He didn't check the total. He didn't care that the bill was likely over $4,500. He just reached into his inner jacket pocket and withdrew the card, the American Express Centurion, the black card. It was made of anodized titanium, heavy and cold to the touch. I knew exactly how it felt because I was the one who had filled out the application. I was the one who had paid the initiation fee. I was the one whose credit score and assets secured the line of credit. Liam was merely an authorized user, a secondary cardholder attached to the primary account, like a barnacle attached to a whale. He dropped the card onto the bill folder with a dull thud, the metal echoing against the silence of the room. "Keep the change," he said with a wink at Sophie, ignoring the fact that the gratuity was already included for parties of 2 or more at this establishment. Sophie beamed at him. "Oh, Liam, you are so generous." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I bet you treat all your business partners this well. Only the special ones." Liam replied, his voice dripping with that fake charm that used to make my knees weak. Now it just made my stomach turn. I looked down at my phone screen. The interface of the Amex app was clean and simple. There it was, the image of the black card, followed by the last 4 digits, 4098. Below it was a status bar that currently read, "Active." My thumb hovered over the option labeled, "Manage Card." I watched Charles pick up the folder and the card gracefully bowing before turning to walk toward the point-of-sale terminal located near the bar. It was about 20 feet away from where I sat. This was it. The moment the guillotine blade would drop, I tapped the screen. A menu slid up from the bottom. "Freeze card." A prompt appeared, asking for confirmation. "Freezing this card will prevent any new purchases or cash advances. Are you sure you want to proceed?" I didn't hesitate. I didn't blink. I pressed confirm. The little loading circle spun for a fraction of a second, and then a green check mark appeared, followed by the text, "Card frozen." I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. At the terminal, I saw Charles swipe the heavy titanium card. He waited. He frowned. He swiped it again, gently, wiping the magnetic strip on his apron, thinking perhaps it was just a smudge. He inserted the chip. He waited again. I could see the confusion on his face. He typed something into the register, then looked at the printed slip of paper that had churned out. It wasn't a receipt. It was a decline notice. Charles was a professional. He didn't make a scene immediately. He walked over to the manager, whispered something, and showed him the slip. The manager looked toward table 4, where Liam was currently laughing at something Sophie had said, oblivious to the storm gathering over his head. The manager nodded solemnly, giving Charles the go-ahead. Charles walked back to the table. His pace was slow, deliberate. He held the folder with both hands, like a bearer of bad news at a funeral. I leaned forward, straining my ears. Liam looked up as Charles arrived, expecting his card back, expecting a thank you, expecting to leave like a king. "Sir," Charles said, his voice modulated perfectly to be polite, yet carrying enough projection that the nearby tables could hear. "I am afraid there is a problem with the card." Liam's smile faltered, just a fraction. "What do you mean? A problem?" He laughed nervously, glancing at Sophie. "It is a Centurion card, Charles. There is no limit." "Run it again. I have run it 3 times, sir," Charles replied, keeping his face impassive. "The issuer has declined the transaction. The code returned indicates that the card has been reported lost or stolen by the primary account holder." The words hung in the air, like toxic smoke. "Reported stolen." Liam repeated, his voice rising an octave. "That is ridiculous. I am the account holder. There must be a mistake with your machine. Do you know who I am?" "I do, sir," Charles said, icy and calm. "However, the terminal says the primary owner, Ms. Elena Sterling, has frozen the assets associated with this user." Sophie's eyes widened. She pulled her hand away from Liam's as if he were suddenly contagious. "Elena," she whispered, "you said the account was yours. You said you handled the finances." Liam's face turned a deep shade of crimson, matching the spilled drop of wine on the tablecloth. "Shut up, Sophie," he hissed. He turned back to Charles, looking frantic. "Look, just try it one more time. It is a glitch. The bank probably just flagged it because of the large amount. I will call them later. Just force it through." "I cannot force a declined card, sir," Charles said firmly. "Do you have another form of payment?" Liam let out a frustrated growl and snatched the black card back, shoving it into his pocket. "Fine, stupid bank. I will fire my private banker in the morning for this embarrassment." He pulled out his wallet again. "Here, try this one." He produced a Chase Sapphire Reserve, another heavy metal card, another status symbol, another card that was linked to my checking account. I watched him hand it over. My thumb was already moving on my phone screen, switching from the Amex app to the Chase banking app. I had prepared for this. I knew he carried 3 cards, all of them mine, all of them paid for by the Sterling Trust. As Charles turned to walk back to the terminal, I tapped the lock icon on the Chase interface. Account locked. Please contact customer service. The dance repeated itself. Charles returned faster this time. The patience was draining from his face. Declined. Sir Charles announced loud enough that the couple at the adjacent table stopped eating their dessert to watch Insufficient. Authorization. The account is locked. Liam stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the wooden floor. He looked wild, desperate sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. This is impossible. I just used this card this morning to buy the tickets. Tickets for a flight he never took, I thought coldly. Sophie was now leaning away from him, crossing her arms over her chest. Liam is there. Something you want to tell me. Why are all your cards being rejected? You said you were a billionaire. I am, he shouted, causing the entire restaurant to fall silent. I am a tech CEO. This is just a security protocol because of the high-value transaction. Stop looking at me like that. He dug through his wallet, his fingers trembling. He pulled out a Visa. Infinite. This was his emergency card, the one I told him to keep for dire situations. I froze that one too, before it even left his hand. When Charles shook his head for the 3rd time without even taking the card to the terminal, the humiliation was complete. Sir, the manager, stepped in now, standing beside Charles. He was a large man with a stern face. We have a bill of $4,520. We need to settle this now, or I will have to call the authorities. Liam looked around the room. He saw the eyes of the New York elite on him. He saw the judgment, the amusement, the pity. He looked at Sophie, begging for help. Don't look at me, Sophie snapped, clutching her designer purse. I left my wallet in the hotel, and I am certainly not paying for a meal you invited me to, hoping to impress me. This is humiliating, Liam. Liam turned his pockets out. He pulled out a few crumpled $20 bills. Nowhere near enough. He looked at the manager, his arrogance completely evoked, replaced by the pathetic fear of a fraud. I don't have the cash on me, Liam stammered. My phone isn't working for Apple Pay either because the cards are linked. Then we have a problem, sir, the manager said, crossing his arms. There was a long, agonizing silence. Then Liam slowly reached for his left wrist. My Rolex, he said, his voice cracking. It is a Submariner date, blue dial, 2-tone, gold and steel. It is worth $15,000 easily. Take it as collateral. I will come back tomorrow with the cash. I swear. No, Sophie gasped. Liam, that is the watch you said you bought to celebrate your first million. Actually, I whispered to myself in the shadows. I bought that to celebrate him, finally learning how to tie his own shoes. Figuratively speaking. The manager looked at the watch skeptically, then nodded. Take it off. Liam fumbled with the clasp, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it onto the table. He handed the heavy timepiece to the manager. The symbol of his success, the only thing he had left that screamed status, was gone, stripped from his wrist like his dignity. We will hold this until noon tomorrow, the manager said, pocketing the watch. If you do not return with the payment in cash, we will sell it to cover the debt and ban you from the premises. Now please leave. You are disturbing our guests. Liam stood there for a moment, looking at his bare wrist, seeing the pale strip of skin where the watch used to be. He looked small. He looked defeated. Sophie didn't wait for him. She stood up, grabbing her coat. I am going back to the hotel. Don't follow me, Liam. I need space. This is just too much drama for a first date. She stormed out, leaving him standing alone by the table. I watched as Liam hung his head, shielding his face with his hand, and rushed toward the exit, ignoring the whispers and the stares that followed him. I waited until the heavy glass doors swung shut behind him before I signaled Charles. He came over immediately, a small, triumphant smile playing on his lips. Excellent work, Charles, I said quietly, sliding a $100 bill across the table. Keep the change. And please ensure that watch is kept in the safe. I will come by to redeem it myself tomorrow. After all, it belongs to the family estate." "Certainly, Miss Sterling," Charles said, bowing slightly. "It was a pleasure to assist you." I stood up, smoothing my dress. I felt lighter. The first strike had landed perfectly, but this was just the beginning. Liam had lost his pride tonight, but by tomorrow he would lose his home, and by the end of the week, he would lose his freedom. I walked out of the restaurant, stepping into the cool night air of Manhattan, pulling my coat tight around me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the security system at our Hamptons villa. It was time for Phase 2. The interior of the town car was silent, save for the low hum of the engine and the rhythmic swish of wipers against the glass. A light rain had begun to fall over Manhattan, blurring the city lights into streaks of gold and crimson. I watched the raindrops race each other down the window, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. The restaurant scene was over, but the night was young, and I had much work to do. I looked down at the iPad resting on my lap. The tracking dot for Liam had stopped moving. He was not at the Four Seasons. He was not at the Ritz-Carlton. He was at a boutique hotel in Soho, a trendy place, but certainly not the level of luxury he was accustomed to. It made sense. With the black card frozen and the Sapphire Reserve locked, he would be forced to use his personal credit card, the one with the $5,000 limit, the one I allowed him to keep for gas and coffee. He was likely in the room right now, ordering room service and lying to Sophie, telling her it was a banking error, telling her that tomorrow everything would be sorted out. He probably felt safe. He probably thought the worst was over. He was wrong. I swiped the screen, closing the tracking map and opening my encrypted file manager. I navigated to a folder labeled Assets Real Estate. It contained the deeds to every property in the Sterling portfolio. There were apartments in London, a chalet in Aspen, and a townhouse in Paris. But I was looking for one specific file, the deed to the Hamptons estate. Liam loved that house. He called it our summer palace. He spent every weekend from May to September there hosting parties for his tech bro friends, drinking my scotch and smoking cigars on the deck overlooking the Atlantic. He boasted about the heated infinity pool, the private beach access, and the 6-car garage. He told everyone who would listen that he had designed the renovation himself. The truth was far less flattering. Liam had never read the fine print of anything I put in front of him. He was too busy staring at his reflection in the mirror. When we bought the property 3 years ago, I told him I was handling the paperwork for tax purposes. I set up a limited liability company called Blue Horizon Holdings LLC. I was the sole managing member. Liam was not listed as an owner. He was not listed as a manager. He was not even listed as a tenant. Legally speaking, he was a guest who had overstayed his welcome. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. It was 9:30 at night, but in the world of high stakes, real estate money never sleeps. Jonathan picked up on the second ring. Jonathan. "Elena, is everything all right?" Calling this late usually means a crisis or an opportunity. "Hello, Jonathan," I said, my voice smooth and devoid of emotion. "I have an opportunity for you. Do you remember the buyer from Dubai who was obsessed with the Hamptons property, the one who offered cash 6 months ago, but I turned him down?" "Of course," Jonathan replied instantly. "He asks about it every month. He said he has never seen a view like that anywhere else in East Hampton." "Why are you reconsidering?" "I am not just reconsidering, Jonathan. I am selling it." Silence stretched on the line for a moment. "Sell it," Jonathan repeated clearly. Stunned, Elena. "That is the crown jewel of your portfolio. The market is up, but you don't need the liquidity." "Is this about Liam?" "This is entirely about business," I lied smoothly. "Or rather, the business of cleaning house." "I want to sell it tonight. Tonight, Jonathan." Night. Laughed nervously. "Elena, real estate doesn't work like ordering a pizza. We need inspections, title searches, closing documents." "Not if the price is right," I cut him off. "Listen to me carefully, Jonathan. The property is valued at $12 million. I am willing to let it go for $9.5 million. That is a 20% discount instant equity for the buyer. But I have conditions." I could hear the sound of Jonathan scrambling, probably grabbing a pen and paper. "Go on. I am listening." Condition 1. It must be an all-cash deal. The funds must be wired to the Sterling Trust account by noon tomorrow. Condition 2. The sale is as is. No inspections, no contingencies. And Condition 3. This is the most important one. The buyer takes immediate possession, meaning tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Jonathan let out a low whistle. Elena, you are practically giving it away at that price. The buyer would be insane to say no, but immediate possession usually takes at least a week for move-out. No move-out, I said coldly. The house comes fully furnished. The art, the furniture, the wine cellar. It all stays. The only thing leaving the premises will be the personal effects of Mr. Porter, and those will be removed tonight. There was a pause, and then Jonathan's voice shifted. He was no longer the friend he was, the broker smelling a massive commission. Done. I will call the buyer's representative right now. He is in London, so he is awake. If he wires the deposit tonight, can we sign digital contracts in the next hour? Send them over, I said. I will be waiting. I hung up and leaned back against the leather seat, watching the city pass by. Selling a $12 million home in a 10-minute phone call gave me a rush of adrenaline that no amount of shopping could ever provide. It was power. Pure, unadulterated power. Liam thought he was playing chess, but he was barely playing checkers. Now came the part that required physical intervention. Thomas, I said to the driver, change of plans. We are not going back to the penthouse. Take me to the Hamptons. Thomas looked at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes wide. Miss Elena, it is a 2-hour drive in this rain. Are you sure? Drive, Thomas, I said softly. I have some packing to do. The drive gave me time to coordinate the logistics. I did not want to touch Liam's things myself. I did not want to smell his cologne on his shirts or see the golf clubs he bought with my money. So I called a private junk removal service, the kind that specializes in hoarder situations and rapid evictions. I paid them triple their hourly rate to meet me at the house at midnight. When we pulled into the long gravel driveway of the estate, the rain had turned into a torrential downpour, thunder rumbling in the distance, matching the storm inside me. The house stood dark and silent against the backdrop of the crashing ocean waves. Lightning flashed, illuminating the white cedar shingles and the massive glass windows that looked out over the water. It was beautiful, it was perfect, and I felt absolutely nothing for it. I unlocked the front door with my phone, and the alarm system disarmed with a cheerful chirp. The air inside was stale, smelling of sea salt, and the expensive cedar wood candles Liam insisted on burning. I walked into the foyer, my heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. The removal team arrived 10 minutes later, 4 large men in coveralls looking confused to be at a mansion in the middle of the night. Here is the job, I said, standing at the bottom of the grand staircase and addressing the foreman. Anything that looks like it belongs to a man, clothing, shoes, watches, sports equipment, humidors, gadgets, it all goes. The foreman looked around nervously. You want us to pack it for storage, ma'am? I looked at him and smiled a smile that didn't reach my eyes. No, I do not want storage. I want it out. Put it on the curb outside the main gate. If it is raining, let it get wet. If the wind blows it away, so be it. Just get it out of my house. The men exchanged glances, but they didn't argue money talks, and I had paid them enough to silence any questions. They went to work. I stood in the living room and watched the procession of Liam's life being marched out the door. First came his wardrobe racks of Italian suits, cashmere sweaters, and designer jeans dragged roughly across the floor. Next came his collection of sneakers, dozens of boxes of limited edition Jordans and Yeezys tossed into large black trash bags like common garbage. I walked into his study, the room he called his office. It was where he pretended to work on his startup, playing video games and making calls to Sophie. I saw his framed accolades on the wall, participation trophies from charity golf tournaments, and a magazine cover he had paid to be on. I took them down one by one and dropped them into the trash bin. Then I saw it sitting on his mahogany desk, a framed photo of us taken on our wedding day. We looked so happy then, or at least I did. He looked like he had just won the lottery, which in a way he had. picked up the frame, looking at his smiling face one last time. Then I smashed it against the edge of the desk, the glass shattering into 1,000 diamonds. I brushed the shards into the bin with the rest of the debris. Upstairs, the removal team was efficient. I heard the thud of heavy items hitting the floor, putting greens, massage chairs, the ridiculous espresso machine he insisted on having in the bedroom. It was a symphony of destruction. By 2 in the morning, the house was cleansed. The closets were empty. The drawers were bare. The study was stripped of every trace of his ego. I walked out to the front gate holding a large umbrella. The rain was coming down in sheets now, violent and cleansing. Piled high on the wet pavement was a mountain of luxury goods, soaking wet suits draped over crushed boxes, muddy water pooling around leather loafers, a bag of golf clubs that had tipped over, spilling expensive titanium drivers onto the asphalt. It looked like a tragedy. It looked like justice. I pulled out my phone one last time and opened the smart home app. I navigated to the security settings. Change master code. I typed in a new code, a random sequence of numbers that Liam would never guess. Then I deleted his user profile entirely. I removed his fingerprint access. I removed his facial recognition. I revoked his digital key. The house was now a fortress, and he was on the outside. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Jonathan. Subject: contract signed, wire transfer initiated. I opened the attachment. The buyer had signed. The money was moving. The house was sold. The new owner, a private equity tycoon from Dubai, would be arriving at 9 a.m. with his own security team. If Liam tried to come here, if he tried to bring Sophie for a romantic getaway, he would be met not by his wife, but by armed guards and a trespassing charge. I walked back to the car where Thomas was waiting with the engine running. He had watched the entire scene in silence, holding the door open for me as I approached. "Where to now, Ms. Sterling?" he asked. His voice respectful, but laced with a hint of awe. "Home, Thomas," I said, sliding into the dry warmth of the back seat. "And Thomas, remind me to call the landscaping company tomorrow. I want them to plant new roses by the gate. The old ones have been contaminated by the trash." As we drove away, I didn't look back at the pile of wet clothes on the curb. I didn't look back at the house that had been the stage for his lies. I looked forward toward the city, toward the morning, toward the meeting where I would take the final thing he had left: his company. The rain lashed against the windows, but for the first time in a long time, I could see the road ahead perfectly clear. The morning sun over Manhattan was blindingly bright, but inside the climate-controlled glass box of my corner office, the light was cool and diffuse. I sat at the head of the conference table, the leather of the Eames chair supporting my back like a throne. My team was briefing me on the quarterly projections for our biotech portfolio. But my attention was divided. Propped up against my water bottle was my iPad streaming a live feed from the security camera outside the front door of our penthouse. I was waiting for the show to begin. It was 10:30 in the morning. Liam would be arriving any minute. He had spent the night at a hotel, likely tossing and turning, trying to figure out how to spin the disaster at the restaurant. He probably rehearsed his speech a dozen times in the mirror. He would play the victim. He would say it was a misunderstanding. He would say Sophie was a crazy stalker. He was trying to let down gently. He would rely on his boyish charm, the same charm that had fooled me for 5 years. But charm does not work on a woman who has seen the ledger. A notification popped up on the screen. Motion detected penthouse vestibule. There he was, on the grainy high-definition video feed. Liam looked like a ghost of the man who had left 24 hours ago. He was wearing the same suit, but it was wrinkled now, the crisp lines gone. The top button of his shirt was undone and his tie was missing. His hair, usually gelled into perfect submission, was messy, windblown. I zoomed in slightly. His eyes were puffy. He looked hungover. He looked scared. I watched as he approached the massive double doors of the apartment. He reached out to the keypad, confident, familiar. He punched in the code, 1024, my birthday. The light on the lock flashed red. He frowned. I could see him shake his head, muttering to himself. He probably thought he mistyped it. He tried again. Slower this time, pressing each button with exaggerated precision. 1024. Red flash. Access denied. He took a step back, staring at the lock as if it had personally insulted him. He wiped his palms on his trousers and tried a different code. 4098. The last 4 digits of the black card he loved so much. The code he used for his luggage. Red flash access. Denied. Panic was starting to set in. I could see it in the way his shoulders tensed in the way he looked around the empty hallway, checking if anyone was watching. He tried his fingerprint. The scanner beeped an angry rejection tone. He brought his face close for the retinal scan. The system didn't even wake up. He was locked out. I took a sip of my espresso, savoring the bitterness. It tasted like victory. On the screen, Liam pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen aggressively, then held it to his ear. A moment later, my phone buzzed on the conference table. The caller ID flashed hubby with a heart emoji. I had forgotten to change the contact name. Note to self, fix that. Later, I held up a hand to my team, signaling for silence. They stopped talking immediately, watching me with respectful curiosity. They didn't know the details, but they knew I was in war mode, and in this industry, you do not interrupt the boss when she is at war. I picked up the phone, but I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring 3 times, 4 times, making him sweat, making him wonder if I was even going to acknowledge his existence. Finally, I slid my thumb across the screen. "Hello?" I said. My voice was calm, breezy, almost cheerful, the voice of a woman who had nothing to hide and everything to gain. I am in the middle of a board meeting. "Liam, you are back early from San Francisco. How was the flight?" "Elena." Liam's voice cracked. It was loud, shrill, echoing slightly in the hallway on his end and through the speaker on mine. "Elena, what is going on?" "I am at the apartment. The door won't open. The codes aren't working. Is the system down? You need to call the building manager right now and tell them to let me in. I have a headache and I just want a shower." I leaned back in my chair, swiveling slightly to look out at the skyline. The Empire State Building stood tall in the distance, a monument to endurance. "Oh, that," I said casually, as if discussing the weather. "No, the system isn't down, Liam. It is working perfectly. I had the security protocols updated this morning." "Updated?" He sounded confused. "Why? What are you talking about? Just give me the new code." "Elena, stop playing games." "I am not playing games, Liam," I said, my voice dropping an octave, losing the cheerfulness, hardening into steel. "I am playing by the rules you agreed to, the rules you signed." There was a silence on the line, heavy and thick. I could hear him breathing, ragged breaths. "What do you mean?" he whispered. "I mean that at 9 o'clock this morning, my attorney Samuel Black filed a petition for divorce in the Supreme Court of New York County. I checked the time on my watch. It is now 10:35. You should have been served the papers via email about 10 minutes ago. Check your spam folder, darling. Divorce." The word exploded out of him almost like a bark. "You filed for divorce. Are you insane over a credit card decline?" "Elena, we can talk about this. You are overreacting. I can explain everything. Sophie is just a client. I was trying to land an account. I cut him off. I didn't have the patience for his lies, not anymore. Save the pitch for someone who is buying Liam. I am not an investor anymore. I am the opposition. And regarding the door, you seem to have forgotten the terms of our prenuptial agreement. Specifically, Article 15, Section C regarding infidelity and moral turpitude. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. He had never read the prenup. He had signed it blindly 5 years ago, too eager to get his hands on my lifestyle to worry about the fine print. The clause states, I continued reciting the words from memory, that in the event of proven infidelity documented by irrefutable evidence, which I have thanks to the audio recording from the restaurant and the testimony of the staff, the spouse in breach of contract forfeits all rights to marital residence immediately. Furthermore, you have a 24-hour grace period to vacate any and all properties owned by the Sterling Trust. That grace period started when I signed the affidavit this morning. I watched the screen. Liam was pacing now back and forth in front of the door, waving his free hand in the air like a madman. "You can't do this!" he screamed. His voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "This is my house, too. My name is on the mail. I have lived there for 5 years. You can't just kick me out on the street. I will sue you, Elena. I swear to God, I will sue you for everything you have. I will take half the company. I will take the Hamptons house. I will take it all." I laughed. It was a dark, dry sound. You can't take the Hamptons house, Liam, because I sold it last night. The new owners moved in this morning, and as for suing me, go ahead. My legal team is on retainer billing $5,000 an hour. Can you afford $5,000 an hour? Liam, can you afford $5 right now? Liam stopped pacing. He slumped against the door, his forehead resting against the wood. Elena, please, he whimpered, switching tactics instantly from aggression to pity. Please don't do this. I have nowhere to go. My parents are in Ohio. All my friends are your friends. I have no cash. You froze everything. Just let me in. Let me get my clothes. Let me get my laptop. We can talk about this like adults. I love you, Elena. Doesn't that mean anything? I love you? The words that used to make my heart flutter now felt like slime. It meant something. Once I said quietly, it meant something before you used my money to buy a $2,000 bottle of wine for a girl who calls me old. It meant something before you planned to leave me penniless. It meant something before you lied to my face about a business trip. Elena, he sobbed genuinely, crying. Now, I am sorry. I made a mistake. I was weak. Just open the door. I looked at the screen one last time. He looked pathetic. He looked small. No, I said. And Liam, do not try to go to the office either. Security has your photo. They have orders to escort you off the premises if you come within 50 feet of the building. Your personal belongings from the penthouse have been boxed up and sent to a storage unit in Queens. The key is in the mail. Good luck with the traffic. Wait, Elena! Wait! He shouted, panic rising in his voice again. Goodbye, Liam, I said, and a piece of advice. Save whatever money you have left for a lawyer, instead of wasting it on oysters at Le Bernardin. I hung up. I stared at the phone for a second, then turned it face down on the table, on the iPad screen. I watched the aftermath. Liam stared at his phone in disbelief. He pounded his fist against the door once, twice, 3 times, screaming something I couldn't hear. Then he slid down the doorframe, sitting on the floor of the hallway, head in his hands. He looked like a child who had been put in timeout. But this wasn't a timeout. This was exile. I looked up at my team. They were all staring at me, wide-eyed, silent. Sorry about that, I said, smoothing my blazer. Where were we? Right? The third quarter projections. I picked up the laser pointer and directed it at the chart on the wall. The red dot was steady, unwavering, just like my hand. The meeting continued. The business of making money continued. The world kept turning. But for Liam Porter, the world had just stopped. I felt a vibration in my chest, a lightness I hadn't felt in years. It was the weight of him lifting off my shoulders. I was free, I was alone, and I was richer than I had ever been, not just in money, but in self-respect. I checked the time again. 10:45. He had 22 hours and 15 minutes left to leave the city before I unleashed the next phase. Because I wasn't just kicking him out of my house, I was about to kick him out of his own company, and that was going to be the real show. The fall from grace is rarely a straight line down. Usually it is a series of humiliating stumbles. And for Liam Porter, the stairs were steep and covered in grease. He had spent the last 48 hours living in a reality that his brain simply refused to accept. 2 days ago, he was the master of a Tribeca penthouse, sleeping on Egyptian cotton sheets, with a view of the Hudson River. Today, he was waking up on a lumpy futon in a 400-square-foot studio apartment in Bushwick. I knew exactly where he was because Sophie, the 23-year-old influencer he had risked everything for, was not exactly known for her discretion. She had geotagged her apartment in a dozen posts over the last year, trying to make the exposed brick wall look chic rather than crumbling. I imagined the scene with vivid clarity based on the layout of the building, which I had looked up on Zillow, just for entertainment. The apartment would smell of stale vape smoke and cheap vanilla candles. The windows looked out onto a brick wall of the adjacent building, blocking out most of the natural light. There was no walk-in closet. There was barely a closet at all. Liam's few remaining possessions, the ones that hadn't been ruined by the rain or lost in the eviction, were likely piled in the corner in garbage bags, looking like the debris of a shipwreck Liam sat up on them. the futon groaning as his back popped. He was a man who required a firmness setting of 6 on a sleep number bed. This cheap mattress was destroying his spine, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the psychological torture of his new roommate. Sophie was standing in the kitchenette, which was really just a stove next to the bathroom door, holding her phone up to a ring light. She was filming a "Get Ready With Me" video, her voice pitched high and fake. "Hey guys," she chirped at the camera. "So today is going to be super busy. I have a casting call and then a brunch meeting. Ignore the mess in the back. My friend is crashing here for a few days while his place is being renovated." "Friend?" Liam rubbed his face, trying to wipe away the exhaustion. Friend. He was supposed to be her savior, her ticket to the high life. 2 nights ago, she was calling him her soulmate. Now that the black card was frozen and the Hamptons' house was gone, he had been demoted to a squatter. He stood up, trying to smooth the wrinkles out of his suit. It was the same charcoal Armani suit he had worn to the restaurant. He had been wearing it for 3 days now. It smelled of sweat and desperation. He didn't have the money for dry cleaning, and he certainly didn't have the money to buy a new one. Sophie turned off the ring light, and her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of annoyance that made her look older than her years. "You are in the shot, Liam," she snapped. "Can you maybe go to the bathroom or something? I am trying to work here." Liam stiffened, his ego flaring up like a dying ember. "Sophie, I am the CEO of a tech company. I am not going to hide in a bathroom while you film TikTok. Dances." Sophie laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "CEO of what, Liam?" "You can't even afford an Uber. You owe me $50 for the pizza last night, by the way. When are you going to pay me back?" "I told you," Liam said, his voice rising defensive and whiny. "My assets are temporarily frozen. It is a standard procedure during a divorce. Elena, playing dirty, but my lawyers are on it. Once the court hearing is set, I will get access to my accounts again, and I will buy this whole building just to evict you. If you keep talking to me like that." Sophie rolled her eyes, applying mascara aggressively. "Your lawyers?" "Liam, you don't have lawyers. You have a public defender mentality right now. And honestly, this whole sleeping on my couch thing is getting old fast. You said you had millions. You said you were the one with the money, not your wife." "I do have money," Liam shouted, slamming his hand against the wall. The thin drywall vibrated. "It is tied up in equity. You don't understand how high finance works, Sophie. It is not liquid cash. It is value. Value doesn't pay rent." Sophie shot back. "And value doesn't buy me a new Balenciaga bag, which you promised me for my birthday next week. If you don't figure this out by Friday, Liam, you are out. I can't have a broke old man cramping my style." She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard a framed poster of a motivational quote fell off the wall and cracked on the floor. Liam stood alone in the silence of the cramped room. He was shaking. Rage and humiliation were warring inside him. He wanted to scream. He wanted to break things, but he didn't own anything to break. He walked over to the tiny window and looked out at the alleyway below. A rat scurried across a pile of trash bags. For a second, he saw the resemblance. He was trapped, cornered, living off scraps. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen was cracked from when he dropped it yesterday in a fit of anger. The battery was at 12%. He didn't have a charger because he had left his organizer at the penthouse and he was too proud to ask Sophie to borrow hers. He opened his email, ignoring the dozens of notifications from debt collectors and the automated emails from his bank regarding the overdraft fees. He was looking for one thing, one lifeline. His company TechNexus was running on fumes. I knew this because I had seen the books, but Liam lived in a delusion where the next big break was always just around the corner. He believed his algorithm was revolutionary. He believed he just needed one visionary investor to see the potential, and then he saw it. At the top of his inbox was an email marked High Priority Subject Series B Funding Pitch Meeting from Executive Assistant to the Board, Nemesis Capital. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He tapped the email, his fingers trembling. Dear Mr. Porter, following the review of your preliminary deck, Nemesis Capital is intrigued by the disruption potential of TechNexus. We would like to invite you to our headquarters on Wall Street next Tuesday at 10 a.m. to present your proposal to our managing partners. We are looking to deploy capital in the range of $10 to $15 million for the right opportunity. Please confirm your attendance. Regards, Sarah J., Executive Assistant Liam. Let out a breath that sounded like a sob. $10 million. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was salvation. With $10 million, he could pay off his debts. He could hire a shark of a lawyer to fight me. He could get his own penthouse. He could rub Sophie's face in his success. Nemesis Capital. He had heard the name. It was a new fund, extremely private, very aggressive. No one knew exactly who was behind it, but rumor had it they had deep pockets and a ruthless approach to scaling startups. It was exactly the kind of validation Liam craved. He wasn't a fraud. He was a visionary. He just needed the capital to prove it. He hit reply, typing furiously with his thumbs. Confirmed. I will be there regarding the future of Tech Nexus. He hit send and threw the phone onto the futon, letting out a laugh that bordered on manic. He walked into the tiny bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. The lighting was harsh fluorescent green, showing every pore, every line of stress. You are Liam Porter, he whispered to his reflection. You are a genius. She thinks she can break you. She thinks she can take away your credit cards and your house and leave you to rot. But she doesn't understand who you are. You built this company. You are the talent. She was just the wallet. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the shame of the last 2 days. He needed a plan. He had 5 days to prepare for the pitch of his life. He needed to look the part. He couldn't walk into a Wall Street boardroom looking like a vagrant. He needed a haircut. He needed his suit pressed. He needed to project absolute confidence. He checked his wallet. He had $40 in cash left. That wasn't enough for a haircut in the city, not at the salons he was used to, but it was enough for dry cleaning if he found a cheap place and he could polish his own shoes. He started pacing the small room, his energy returning, fueled by the dopamine hit of potential success. He would show me. He would show Sophie. He would show the world. He sat down at Sophie's small, rickety desk, pushing aside her makeup brushes, and opened his laptop. The screen flickered to life. He opened his pitch deck. The slides were good, but they needed to be better. They needed to be undeniable. He needed to hide the fact that he had embezzled $500,000 of operating cash. He needed to massage the numbers, make the growth curve look like a hockey stick. I am going to crush this, he muttered, typing furiously. Unbeknownst to him, miles away in my glass-walled office, I was reading the same email. I was the one who had drafted it. I was the one who had approved the meeting. I was Nemesis Capital. The name was a little heavy-handed, perhaps. A nemesis is an agent of downfall, an act of retribution. But Liam was not a student of Greek mythology. He was a student of his own ego, and his ego saw only the dollar signs. I watched his location dot on my iPad. It hadn't moved from the Bushwick apartment, telling me he was taking the bait. He was staying put, preparing, working, scheming. He thought he was, climbing a ladder out of the pit I had dug for him. He didn't realize the ladder was made of smoke, and at the top I would be waiting not with a check, but with a pair of handcuffs. The desperation of a man like Liam is a dangerous thing. It makes him reckless. It makes him blind. He was so focused on the $10 million prize that he wouldn't ask the right questions. He wouldn't wonder why a secretive fund was suddenly so interested in a company with declining revenue. He wouldn't question why the meeting was scheduled so quickly. He just wanted to be the king again. And I was going to let him wear the crown for exactly 5 minutes before I took his head. Back in the apartment, Liam finished editing a slide and leaned back, smiling. The humiliation of the restaurant was fading. The stinging insults from Sophie were becoming background noise. He was already mentally spending the money. He would buy a Ferrari, no a McLaren. He would buy a loft in Soho. He would get a new girlfriend, someone famous. He picked up his phone and looked at the cracked screen. Just you wait, Elena, he whispered. Just you wait until next Tuesday. You will see who the real boss is. He closed his eyes, imagining the handshake, the wire transfer, the vindication. He didn't know that the only thing waiting for him next Tuesday was the final act of his destruction, and I, Elena Sterling, would be sitting in the front row holding the detonator, while Liam was busy ironing his only remaining suit in a squalid apartment in Bushwick, dreaming of a $10 million injection that would save his ego. I was sitting in a climate-controlled conference room on the 45th floor of the Sterling building, surrounded by a very different kind of team. They were not investors. They were not marketers. They were the cleanup crew. In the world of high finance, there is a weapon far more lethal than a lawyer and far more terrifying than a police officer. It is called a forensic accountant. I had hired the best firm in the city. The kind of firm that doesn't have a website, the kind of firm that governments call when they need to find hidden assets in offshore accounts. 3 men and 2 women sat around the mahogany table, their eyes glued to their laptops. The air in the room was thick with the hum of servers and the quiet scratching of styluses on tablets. They had been poring over the books of TechNexus for 6 hours straight. TechNexus was technically a private company, but because I had funneled my personal wealth into it through a series of shell corporations, I had the legal right to audit the books at any time without alerting the CEO. And since the CEO was currently distracted by his own poverty, he had no idea that we were dissecting his financial life. Frame by frame, the lead accountant was a man named Mr. Silas. He was 50 years old with wire-rimmed glasses and the personality of a spreadsheet. He didn't smile. He didn't make small talk. He just hunted for discrepancies, Miss Sterling, Silas said, breaking the silence of the room. He didn't look up from his screen. I think you need to see this. I stood up and walked over to where he was sitting, leaning over his shoulder. The screen was filled with rows and columns of data, a digital map of where every single dollar in the company had gone. What did you find? I asked, my voice steady. Silas pointed a manicured finger at a category labeled Operational Expenses, specifically a subledger titled Market Research and Development. According to the General Ledger, Silas said in his dry, monotone voice, TechNexus has spent over $500,000 in the last 12 months on market research. This is a staggering amount for a pre-revenue startup of this size. Usually market research accounts for maybe 5% of the budget. Here it is, nearly 30%. I stared at the number. $500,000. That was $500,000 of my money I had transferred to the company to pay for developers, for servers, for the actual product. Show me the invoices, I said. Silas clicked a few keys and a series of scanned documents appeared on the screen. At first glance, they looked legitimate. They were invoices from a consulting firm called SL Global Strategies. The descriptions were vague: qualitative focus group, analysis, user experience, field testing, demographic penetration, study. Who are SL Global Strategies? I asked. That is the interesting part, Silas said. We ran a background check on the vendor. The company was incorporated 10 months ago in Delaware. The registered agent is a generic legal service, but when we traced the bank account where the checks were deposited, we found a direct link. He tapped the screen again, bringing up a bank statement. The account belongs to a residential address in the West Village. I leaned closer. The address looked familiar. That is Sophie's old apartment, I whispered. The one she lived in before she started staying at the hotel. Exactly, Silas said. And look at the outflows from that account immediately after the TechNexus checks clear. He scrolled down and the story of the theft unfolded in black and white. On October 12th, TechNexus paid SL Global Strategies $15,000 for user interface feedback. 2 days later, the SL account paid $14,500 to Hermes on Madison Avenue. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest, rising from my stomach like bile. October 12th. That was the week of my birthday. Liam had told me he couldn't afford a gift that year because he was pouring everything back into the company. He had given me a card, a handwritten card, saying his love was the only gift I needed, and 2 days later, he bought his mistress a Birkin bag with my money. Keep going, I said. my voice dropping to a whisper. Silas scrolled down November 5th, payment of $8,000 for field logistics analysis. The next day, a payment of $7,800 to Gotham Dream Cars for a weekend rental of a Lamborghini Huracan. I closed my eyes, remembering that weekend Liam had told me he was going to a tech retreat in upstate New York to network with developers. He had actually taken Sophie to the Hamptons driving a Lamborghini paid for by his wife, speeding down the highway. I paid taxes for January 10th. Payment of $20,000 for strategic partnership consulting. The next day, a wire transfer to a luxury travel agency for a 5-night stay at the Ammon Resort in Turks and Caicos. I opened my eyes. The room seemed to spin slightly. He took her on vacation, I said. It wasn't a business trip. He told me he was going to a conference in Miami. He was on a beach with her, spending $20,000 of stolen corporate funds. Silas nodded solemnly. It appears so, Ms. Sterling. The pattern is consistent. Every time capital was injected into TechNexus by your trust, a significant percentage was immediately siphoned off to this shell company and then spent on luxury consumer goods travel and high-end dining. Essentially, Mr. Porter has been using the company as his personal piggy bank to fund a lifestyle he could not afford on his own. He is not just a cheater, I said, realizing the full gravity of the situation. He is a criminal. This is embezzlement. This is fraud. This is grand larceny. Yes, it is, Silas said quietly. The evidence is irrefutable. We have the bank trails. We have the IP addresses used to create the invoices, which match Mr. Porter's laptop. We have the geolocation data. It is a slam dunk case, Mrs. Sterling. We can draft the report for the district attorney immediately. He could be arrested tonight. I stared at the screen, at the list of lies labeled as market research. Sophie's handbags were market research. His luxury car rentals were market research. Their romantic getaways were market research. He had mocked me. He had laughed at me. He had taken the money I gave him out of love and belief and used it to build a fantasy life with another woman. I looked at Silas. Do not call the district attorney, I said. Silas looked up, surprised. For the first time, an emotion flickered across his face. Confusion. Ms. Sterling, with all due respect, the statutes of limitations are not an issue. But the sooner we file, I said no. I cut him off sharply. I walked back to the head of the table and sat down looking at the team of accountants. If we call the police now, they will go to that sad little apartment in Bushwick and arrest him. He will be booked. He will call a bail bondsman and he will play the victim. He will tell the press that it is a misunderstanding, a messy divorce dispute. He will try to spin it. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. I don't want him to have a spin. I don't want him to have a defense. I want him to be crushed. I want him to walk into a trap that he set for himself. I want him to believe until the very last second that he has won. And then I want to take it all away. Silas slowly took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief, I understand. And what? And do you propose I looked at the calendar on the wall? Next Tuesday. The date was circled in red. He has a meeting, I said. A pitch meeting with Nemesis Capital. He thinks he is going to raise $10 million. He thinks he is going to save his company. He thinks he is going to start a new life. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city that Liam wanted so desperately to conquer. I want you to compile this report, every single transaction, every single fake invoice, every single photo of Sophie wearing the merchandise he bought with stolen funds. Bind it nicely. Make it look professional. I turned back to Silas. And then I want you to bring it to the meeting next Tuesday. You will be sitting in the back of the room. When I give the signal, you will hand it to him. Silas nodded, a small shark-like smile appearing on his face. Understood. And the police have the NYPD Financial Crimes Division waiting in the lobby, I said. Tell them they will have a confessed embezzler handed to them at 10:30 a.m. sharp. I dismissed the team and they packed up their laptops, filing out of the room, silently leaving me alone with the truth. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty chair at the other end of the table. $500,000. It wasn't the money that hurt. I had lost more than that in a bad trading day. The Sterling Trust generated that amount in interest every month. It was the audacity. It was the fact that he looked me in the eye every night and complained about how hard it was to run a startup. It was the fact that he let me comfort him when he said the runway was getting short. It was the fact that he let me sign the checks thinking I was investing in his dream when I was really investing in his infidelity. He had Halloweened out the company just like he had Halloweened out our marriage. It was a shell, a prop, a facade. I picked up my phone and dialed my executive assistant. Sarah, I said, my voice brisk and efficient. Is everything set for the Tuesday meeting? Yes, Miss Sterling, Sarah replied. Her voice was crisp, efficient. She knew the plan. Nemesis Capital is ready. We have rented the conference suite on the 60th floor of the World Trade Center to make it look impressive. We have hired actors to play the junior analysts. The signage is being installed tomorrow. Good, I said, and make sure the coffee is hot, and make sure the chairs are comfortable. I want him to feel relaxed. Sarah, I want him to feel like he has already won. Of course, Sarah said. And Ms. Sterling, yes. Sophie posted a new TikTok. She is unboxing a vintage Chanel bag. She claims it was a gift from a secret admirer. I laughed. It was a dark, bitter sound. Add it to the file, Sarah. Print a screenshot of the video and add it to the evidence binder. It will be a nice cherry on top of the indictment. I hung up and looked at the city lights below. Liam wanted to be a player in the big leagues. He wanted to swim with the sharks. Well, he was about to find out that the water was full of blood, and he was the only one bleeding. I walked over to the whiteboard where I had sketched out the timeline of his destruction. Phase 1, the black card. Complete Phase 2, the house complete Phase 3, the hope in progress. He was currently in the eye of the storm, the calm before the final cataclysm. He was probably sitting in that apartment right now, practicing his pitch, rehearsing his lies, polishing his shoes with a rag. He didn't know that the company he was trying to save was already dead. He didn't know that the investors he was trying to woo were his executioners. He thought he was going to a business meeting. He was actually going to his own funeral. I turned off the lights in the conference room, plunging the space into darkness, save for the glow of the city. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. Tuesday morning arrived with a sky the color of bruised steel hanging low over the financial district. It was the kind of weather that made the skyscrapers look like fortresses, impregnable and cold, specifically the World Trade Center, where the clouds seemed to cut right through the upper floors. I was already inside, sitting in the adjacent observation room behind a panel of one-way glass, sipping a double espresso that did nothing to warm the ice in my veins. The conference room, known as the aquarium because of its floor-to-ceiling glass walls, was staged to perfection. We had rented the suite through a shell company just 48 hours ago. The furniture was sleek Italian leather. The table was a slab of black marble, and the view from the 60th floor screamed power money and dominance. I checked my watch. It was 9:55. My actors were already in place. 3 young, sharp-looking associates sat at the table with open laptops and serious expressions. They were actually graduate students from the NYU drama department, but today they were junior partners at Nemesis Capital. I had briefed them thoroughly. Their job was to nod, to take notes, and to feed Liam's ego until it was fat enough for the slaughter. And then the door opened. Liam Porter walked in. He paused at the threshold, adjusting his cuffs. He was wearing a navy blue suit that fit him well enough, but I recognized the slight sheen of the fabric. It was a rental, likely from a same-day service in Brooklyn. He had polished his shoes, but the scuff marks on the toes were still visible under the harsh fluorescent lights. He looked around the room, and I saw his eyes widen. He took in the view of the harbor, the expensive furniture, the sheer scale of the wealth on display. He let out a breath and put on his mask, the mask of the confident CEO, the mask he had worn when he first met me. "Welcome, Mr. Porter," one of the actors said, standing up to shake his hand. "We are the Preliminary Investment Committee. Please take a seat." Liam strode to the head of the table, radiating a manic energy. "Thank you," he said, his voice booming slightly too loud for the acoustic space. "It is an honor to be here at Nemesis. I have Heard great things about your firm's vision. He hadn't heard anything because the firm didn't exist until last week. But flattery was Liam's native language. He connected his laptop to the main screen. The logo of TechNexus appeared glowing blue against a black background. I watched him from behind the glass, feeling a strange sense of detachment. He looked so small from here, like an ant trying to negotiate with a boot. "Shall we begin?" Liam asked. "Please," the actor replied. "The floor is yours." Liam launched into his pitch. I had heard it 1,000 times before, but today he was different. Desperation had made him sharper. He spoke about algorithmic efficiency, about market disruption, about the inevitability of his software changing the global supply chain. He was charismatic. He was convincing. If I didn't know he was a thief, I might have written him a check myself. But then came the pivot, the moment I had been waiting for. One of the actors looked up from his notes as I had instructed Mr. Porter. "Your numbers are impressive, but we have concerns about the leadership structure. We noticed in your public filings that there is a significant silent shareholder, A.M. Sterling. Is that correct?" Liam stiffened slightly. He took a sip of water, his hand trembling just a fraction. "Ah, yes. Ms. Sterling," Liam said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "She was an early investor, family money mostly. She is actually my ex-wife." He paused, gauging their reaction, then leaned in conspiratorially. "To be perfectly honest, gentlemen, that relationship has been the biggest bottleneck for this company. Elena is a wonderful woman in her own way, but she is small-minded, she is risk-averse. She doesn't understand the speed of modern tech. She wanted me to play it safe to keep the company small so she could control me." It was suffocating. I gripped the edge of the desk in the observation room. My knuckles turned white. Small-minded, risk-averse. I was the one who told him to pivot to cloud-based storage. I was the one who negotiated his first contract. Liam continued gaining confidence as the actors nodded sympathetically. "The divorce is actually a strategic move for TechNexus." Liam lied smoothly. "I am shedding the dead weight. She was holding us back emotionally and financially. She didn't have the vision for a unicorn company. She just wanted a hobby. Now that I am free, I can finally unleash the full potential of this asset. That is why I am here. I need partners who understand ambition, unlike my former wife, who only understands shopping." One of the actors smiled a tight, thin smile. "We appreciate your candor." "Mr. Porter, it is always difficult when personal lives interfere with professional greatness." "Exactly," Liam said, beaming. "Finally, someone who gets it." So the actor continued, "You are looking for $10 million to buy out her remaining shares and expand operations. $10 million is the ask," Liam said. "But honestly, with the trajectory we are on, that is a conservative valuation. You are getting a bargain." The room fell silent. The three actors looked at each other, then looked at the heavy oak door at the back of the room, the one that connected to my observation suite. "Well, Mr. Porter," the actor said, closing his laptop, "you make a compelling case. But at Nemesis Capital, the junior committee does not have the authority to sign checks of that magnitude." Liam blinked, confused. "Oh, I understood that I was pitching to decision makers. You are pitching to the gatekeepers," the actor corrected. "The decision maker. The chairman has been listening to the entire presentation remotely." Liam looked around the room, scanning for a camera. "I hope they liked what they heard. I think the chairman would like to deliver the verdict in person." The actor pressed a button under the table. A magnetic lock clicked loudly. The heavy oak door opened. I stood up, smoothing the skirt of my black Dior suit. I took a deep breath, inhaling the cold air, conditioning, exhaling the last remnants of my mercy. I walked through the door, my heels clicking on this marble floor like gunshots. Liam was facing the window, looking at the view, confident, relaxed. He turned around slowly, a smile ready on his lips, and then he saw me. The smile didn't just fade, it disintegrated. His face went slack, his eyes bulged. It was as if his brain had short-circuited. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked from me to the actors, then back to me. "Elena," he stammered finally. His voice was a squeak, a pathetic sound compared to the baritone he had been using seconds ago. "Elena, what are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I didn't stop walking. I moved past him, ignoring his existence the way one ignores a piece of furniture, and walked to the head of the table, specifically the chair he had been standing next to. I sat down. It was a power move, simple and absolute. The chair was high-backed, leather imposing. I rested my elbows on the armrests and clasped my hands together, looking up at him. "You must be lost," Liam whispered, a nervous laugh bubbling up in his throat. "Did you follow me here, Elena? This is a private meeting. You can't just barge in. Security is going to." He looked at the actors, expecting them to throw me out, expecting them to be outraged. They didn't move. They sat perfectly still, staring at him with cold indifference. "Elena, seriously," Liam hissed, leaning down towards me, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "This is embarrassing. You are making a scene again. Are you applying for a job here? Is that it? Are you a secretary?" I tilted my head slightly, studying him like a specimen in a jar. "A secretary," I repeated, my voice calm, amplified by the acoustics of the room, making it sound like the voice of God. "Yeah," Liam said, straightening up, adjusting his rental jacket. "Look, I know you are upset about the divorce and the apartment, but you can't stalk me to my business meetings. Go wait in the lobby, and I will buy you a coffee when I am done sealing this deal." I laughed softly. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You think you are sealing a deal?" I asked. "I am raising $10 million, Liam said, pointing at the screen. "Nemesis Capital is going to take me to the next level." "You are right about one thing." "Liam," I said, standing up slowly. I wasn't tall, but in that moment, I felt 10 feet high. "Nemesis is going to take you to a level you have never experienced before." I picked up the heavy crystal pen from the table and spun it between my fingers. "I am Nemesis," I said. Liam froze. "What I am Nemesis, capital," I repeated, clearly enunciating every syllable. Nemesis, in Greek mythology. She is the goddess who enacts retribution against those who succumb to hubris, arrogance before the gods. "You were always bad at history, Liam, so I thought I would give you a live demonstration." Liam looked around the room, frantically waiting for someone to yell, "Cut!" waiting for the joke to end. "The actors I hired." "Are they your friends?" "They are employees," I said. "And this office is mine. The coffee you drank is mine. And the $10 million you are begging for, it is mine." Liam took a step back, stumbling slightly against the chair. "No, that is impossible. You are broke. I saw your accounts. You are just a housewife." "I was never just a housewife, Liam. I was a sleeping dragon, and you just poked me in the eye." I reached under the table and pulled out a thick leather-bound binder. I slammed it onto the marble table with a sound that echoed like a thunderclap. "Let us talk about business." "Mr. Porter," I said, my voice turning icy, "since you are so keen on transparency and ethical leadership," I flipped the binder open, revealing the forensic accounting report. The pages were color-coded, filled with charts and highlighted transactions. "I am not here as your wife today," I said. "I am here as the owner of the Sterling Trust, which holds a 60% controlling interest in TechNexus. And as the majority shareholder, I have called this emergency board meeting to address a serious discrepancy in the finances." Liam looked at the binder, seeing the logo of the forensic accounting firm. He turned pale, a sickly gray color washing over his skin. "Elena, wait," he said, holding up his hands, palms out. "We can talk about this. There is nothing to talk about," I said, cutting him off. I pointed to the page open on the table. Invoice number 704 SL. Global Strategies, $15,000 for user interface. Feedback. Funny how the user feedback looks exactly like a Hermes Birkin bag delivered to Sophie's apartment. Liam's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Invoice number 812. I continued flipping the page relentlessly. $20,000 for a strategic retreat in Turks and Caicos. I checked the weather for that week. Liam, it was sunny, but I don't recall the company authorizing a bonus for the CEO to get a tan with his mistress. "That was business," Liam stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "We were networking." "You were stealing!" I shouted. The word rang in the room, silencing his pathetic excuses. "You were embezzling corporate funds, creating fake vendors and laundering money to fund a lifestyle you did not earn. That is a felony." "Liam, that is not a mistake. That is not a bottleneck. That is a crime." Liam looked at the actors who were now looking at him with open disgust. "Elena, please," he whispered, his bravado completely gone, replaced by the terror of a man watching his life burn down. "I can explain. I will pay it back. Just give me the funding and I will pay it back with interest." I stared at him, feeling a wave of pure revulsion. "I paid it back already." "Liam, I paid it back when I supported you for 5 years. I paid it back when I gave you my heart and you threw it in the trash." I closed the binder with a snap. "Nemesis Capital declines your proposal for investment," I said formally, and then I delivered the final blow, and in my capacity as chairman of the board of TechNexus, invoking Article 23 of the corporate bylaws regarding fiduciary duty and criminal misconduct, I am hereby terminating your employment as CEO effective immediately. "You are fired." "Liam?" "Fired," Liam gasped. "You can't fire me. I started this company. It is my name on the door. It is my money in the bank," I countered. "And as of this morning, your name has been removed from the website. Your access to the building has been revoked, and your company email has been deactivated." Liam looked around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a way to spin this. "You are bluffing," he said, trying to summon one last shred of arrogance. "You can't run this company without me. I am the visionary. The developers love me. If you fire me, the whole team will walk." I smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf. "Actually," I said, picking up my phone, "I had a Zoom call with the development team an hour ago. They were quite relieved to hear that the man who spent their bonus pool on luxury cars was being removed. We have already appointed an interim CEOA woman, actually. She is very risk-averse. She checks every invoice." Liam slumped against the window, the glass cool against his back, looked defeated, broken, hollowed out. "You ruined me," he whispered. "You planned this. You let me come here thinking I was going to be saved." "I didn't ruin you, Liam," I said, walking closer to him until I was standing right in front of him, smelling the fear on him. "I just turned on the lights. You ruined yourself when you decided that I wasn't enough, when you decided that you were smarter than the woman who made you." I turned to the actors. "Gentlemen, thank you for your time. The meeting is adjourned." I turned back to Liam, who was sliding down the glass wall, slowly collapsing under the weight of his reality. "Oh, and one more thing, Liam," I said, glancing at the door. The door opened again, but this time it wasn't a waiter. It wasn't an investor. 2 uniformed officers from the NYPD walked in, followed by a detective in a cheap suit holding a pair of handcuffs. "Mr. Porter," the detective said, walking briskly across the room. "Liam Porter." Liam looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Elena, no, you have the... Oh, you have... right to remain silent," the detective said, pulling Liam's arms behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." I watched as they hauled him up. He looked at me, his eyes begging for mercy, begging for me to stop this, begging for the wife he had betrayed to save him. I just stood there, the boss, the nemesis, the chairman, and checked my watch. "You are late for your next appointment, Liam," I said coldly. "I believe booking is at Central. Booking in Lower Manhattan. Traffic is terrible this time of day." The officers dragged him out. His shoes, the rental shoes, dragged across the marble floor, leaving 2 long black scuff marks. I looked at the scuff marks and frowned. "Sarah," I called out to my assistant who was waiting in the hallway. "Yes, Ms. Sterling. Send the bill for the floor cleaning to Mr. Porter's lawyer," I said, picking up my bag, "and cancel the rental on this room. We are done here." I walked out of the skyscrapers into the sunlight of Wall Street, leaving the empty room and the empty man behind me. Justice had been served, and it tasted expensive. The silence that followed the clicking of the handcuffs was absolute heavy and suffocating like a wool blanket thrown over a fire. Liam stood there, his arms twisted behind his back, his face pressed against the cool glass of the window overlooking the city he thought he owned. The view of the harbor, which moments ago had been a symbol of his limitless future, was now just a backdrop to his total annihilation. Detective Miller, a man with tired eyes and a suit that had seen better days, stepped back and nodded to his partner. The partner, a younger officer with a buzz cut, grabbed Liam by the elbow. Not gently. "Liam Porter, you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement of corporate funds, and falsifying business records." Detective Miller recited the words with the boredom of a man who had done this 1,000 times. "You have the right to remain silent." Liam didn't remain silent. He started to thrash, a pathetic wiggling motion like a fish on a hook. "Elena," he screamed, his voice cracking his head, whipping around to look at me. "Elena, tell them, this is a mistake. Tell them it is a misunderstanding. You can't let them take me. I am the CEO. I am a public figure." I stood by the conference table, my hand resting on the leather binder that contained the evidence, the forensic report, the bank statements, the fake invoices, the photos of the handbags and the vacations. It was all there, a paper trail of his greed meticulously compiled and tied with a bow. "I am afraid I can't do that, Liam," I said, my voice steady, calm, devoid of any pity. "I am the one who called them." I picked up the binder and handed it to Detective Miller. "Here is everything, Detective. The original invoices, the bank transfer records, and the sworn affidavit from the forensic accountant proving that the vendor SL Global Strategies is a shell company solely controlled by Mr. Porter." Miller took the binder, weighing it in his hands. "It is heavy," he remarked dryly. "It cost me $500,000, I replied. "So yes, it carries some weight." Liam's eyes bulged. He looked from the binder to me, realizing finally that there was no way out. There was no spin. There was no charm offensive that could fix this. This wasn't a marital dispute. This was the state of New York versus Liam Porter. "Take him down," Miller said to his partner. The officer shoved Liam forward. Liam stumbled, his rental shoes slipping on the marble floor. He looked at the actors, the young men he had tried to impress, seeking a witness, seeking sympathy. They just watched him, their faces blank, their job done. As they marched him toward the door, he dug his heels in, desperate for one last plea. "Elena," he sobbed, tears streaming down his face, ruining the makeup he had applied to hide his hangover. "Elena, I love you. I am sorry. I will fix it. Please call your lawyer. Get me out of this. I don't want to go to jail." I watched him struggle. Watched the snot running down his nose. Watched the disintegration of the man I had once thought was my soulmate. "You should have thought about that before you spent my money on the Lamborghini," I said simply. "Goodbye, Liam." The door closed behind them, cutting off his wails. I didn't stay in the room. I wanted to see the second act of the show. I walked out of the conference suite and took the private elevator down to the lobby. I knew exactly how long it would take for them to process him down the freight elevator and bring him out through the main atrium. I checked my phone on the way down. I had sent a tip to the press 2 hours ago. Anonymous but credible tech CEO arrested in massive embezzlement scandal at World Trade Center video at 11. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, the lobby was a chaotic sea of flashing cameras and reporters, microphones jostling for position. The security guards were trying to hold them back, but the smell of a scandal was in the air and the paparazzi were hungry. I stood back near the concierge desk, hidden by a large potted palm, watching the freight elevator dinged. The doors slid open and Detective Miller stepped out, followed by the uniformed officer pushing Liam forward. The moment Liam stepped into the light, the lobby exploded. "Mr. Porter, is it true you embezzled millions from your wife? Mr. Porter, do you have a comment on the fraud charges?" "Liam? Look this way." Camera flashes popped like strobe lights, blinding him. Liam ducked his head, trying to shield his face with his shoulder, trying to hide. But there was nowhere to hide. The handcuffs were visible. The tear streaks on his face were visible. The terror in his eyes was captured in high definition and broadcast live to the world. I watched as they shoved him into the back of a waiting NYPD cruiser. He looked out the window one last time, and for a second our eyes met across the lobby. I stood there, tall, composed, unmoving. He looked away, shame burning him alive. Car pulled away, sirens wailing, fading into the traffic of Lower Manhattan. I took a deep breath. It was done. The physical removal was complete, but the destruction wasn't over yet. There was one more loose end, one more rat that needed to be flushed out. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. Sophie. I knew exactly what she was doing. She lived on her phone. She lived for the engagement, for the likes, for the attention. She would have alerts set up for Liam's name. She would be watching this. I refreshed her feed. 5 minutes ago, her story was a video of her drinking a latte with the caption, "Manhattan mornings are a vibe." I refreshed it again. The video was gone. I went to her profile page, the photos of her and Liam, the ones where she had carefully cropped out his face, but left his expensive watch or his suit arm visible to hint at a wealthy boyfriend, were disappearing. One by one, they vanished, deleted from the grid. She was scrubbing him. She was erasing the evidence of her own complicity. And then a new circle appeared around her profile picture. A new story. I tapped it. The video was shot in what looked like a bathroom, likely the one in her cramped apartment. She was crying, or at least she was pretending to cry. Her mascara was artfully smudged, and she was looking into the camera with wide, innocent eyes. The lighting was perfect. "Hey guys," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I just saw the news, and I am literally shaking. I don't even know what to say. I have been receiving so many DMs asking me about Liam Porter." She sniffled, wiping away a fake tear. "I just want to clear the air. I had no idea who he really was. He told me he was single. He told me he was a successful billionaire. He lied to me, just like he lied to everyone else. I feel so violated. I feel so used." She paused, looking down for dramatic effect, then looked back up with a hardened expression. "I am a victim here too, guys. He gaslighted me. He manipulated me into thinking we had a future. I didn't know the money was stolen. I didn't know he was married. I am just a 23-year-old girl trying to make it in the city, and he took advantage of my kindness." She held up a hand showing that she wasn't wearing the diamond bracelet he had bought her, likely hiding it in a drawer to sell later. "I am cutting all ties with him immediately. I don't support fraud. I don't support cheating. Please respect my privacy while I heal from this trauma. Women need to support women right now." The video ended with a black screen and white text. "I stand with the victims." I stared at the screen, letting out a laugh that startled a businessman walking past me. Victim kindness. Women support women. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive. Sophie had pivoted faster than a tech startup. She had thrown Liam under the bus, backed over him, and was now driving away, claiming she was the one who got hit. She didn't care that he was in jail. She didn't care that he had ruined his life for her. She only cared that the gravy train had crashed, and she needed to jump off before she got burned by the wreckage. I checked the comments on her latest post. They were already flooding in. "Oh my God, Sophie, I am so sorry. You are so brave for speaking out. He is a monster. You deserve better." She was winning the narrative, or so she thought. I took a screenshot of her story. The timestamp, the fake tears, the lies. She claimed she didn't know he was married, but I had the recording from the restaurant where she called me the old ball and chain. She claimed she didn't know the money was stolen, but she was the one who received the Hermes bag bought with a check from a shell company. I wasn't going to let her play the victim. I wasn't going to let her spin this into a career boost. I opened my email and composed a new message to the detective, Detective Miller, subject: additional evidence regarding accomplice. Detective, please find attached the social media posts of Miss Sophie Miller claiming ignorance of Mr. Porter's crimes. However, I am also reattaching the audio file from our dinner at Le Bernardin, where she explicitly discusses spending the IPO money and mocking the prenuptial agreement. This contradicts her public statement of being a victim. She was a willing participant and beneficiary of the stolen funds. I believe this qualifies as conspiracy and receiving stolen property. I attached the files and hit send, then I sent a second email. This one was to the same reporter I had tipped off about the arrest. Subject: the other side of the story. Here is the audio recording proving the mistress knew everything. She is currently playing the victim on Instagram. I think your readers would appreciate the irony. Exclusive rights. I hit send. I put my phone back in my bag and walked out of the lobby onto the street. The air was crisp and cold. Liam was in a cell answering for his crimes. Sophie was about to be exposed as a liar and a gold digger facing her own legal nightmare. And I was walking to a late lunch. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from the bank. The forensic team had finished the final sweep of the accounts. They had recovered what was left of the operating capital. I hailed a taxi. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. "The Ritz-Carlton." I said I need a spa day. As the taxi pulled away, I looked back at the World Trade Center one last time. The tower touched the clouds, piercing the gray sky. Liam had wanted to reach the top. He had wanted to be a god. He forgot that when you fall from heaven, the impact is fatal. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't have to worry about a business trip. I didn't have to worry about a lie. The silence in the cab was beautiful. It was the silence of a clean slate. And tomorrow I would start painting a new picture, one where I was the only artist and the only subject. No more muses, no more charities case. Just me, Elena Sterling, the queen of the board, the survivor, the nemesis. And as for Liam and Sophie, they were just footnotes in my biography. A cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake a woman's silence for weakness. It had been 72 hours since the arrest. The adrenaline of the public humiliation in the lobby of the World Trade Center had faded, leaving behind the sterile, grim reality of the legal system. I was sitting in a soundproof interview room at the district attorney's office. The walls were a depressing shade of beige, and the air smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. Across the metal table sat Liam. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 3 days. The designer suit was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. His hair was unwashed, and there were dark circles under his eyes, but despite his physical deterioration, there was a strange glint in his eyes, a look of desperate cunning. I knew that look. It was the look he used when he was bluffing at poker. It was the look of a man who thought he had an ace up his sleeve. My lawyer, Samuel Black, sat next to me, silent and imposing. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Vance, sat at the head of the table reviewing a file. "You are looking well, Elena," Liam said, his voice raspy. He tried to smile, but it came out as a sneer. "Enjoying the show." "I am not here to enjoy anything, Liam," I said coldly. "I am here because your public defender said you had information that could affect the asset distribution in the divorce. You claimed you had a trump card." Liam leaned forward, the chains of his handcuffs rattling against the metal table. "I do have a card, Elena, and it is going to cost you a lot more than the $10 million you denied me." He looked at the DA, then back to me. "You think you are so smart selling the Hamptons house like that," Liam said, his voice dripping with venom. "You threw my clothes on the lawn and sold the estate to some Dubai tycoon for quick cash. You thought you were wiping your hands clean of me." I crossed my arms, waiting. "But you didn't check the title closely enough, did you?" Elena. Liam laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "You see, about 6 months ago, I took out a little insurance policy. I forged your signature on a second mortgage against the Hamptons property." The room went deadly silent. Ms. Vance looked up from her file, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me, Mr. Porter," Ms. Vance said. "Are you confessing to bank fraud on record?" Liam ignored her, keeping his eyes locked on mine. "It was $2 million, Elena. I needed liquidity for a sure thing. Crypto. The market was booming. I put it all into a new coin, leveraged 10 to 1. I thought I would double it in a week, pay off the loan and keep the profit. You would never have known. And let me guess." I said, my voice flat. "You lost it all. Every cent," Liam said with a shrug. "The market crashed. The coin was a rug pull. Bad luck. But here is the beautiful part. Elena, since I forged your signature, the bank thinks you took out the loan, And since you just sold the house to a third party without disclosing that lien, you have committed real estate fraud against the buyer. The bank is going to foreclose on your new Dubai friend. The buyer is going to sue you for selling a distressed asset with a hidden debt. And the bank is going to come after you for the $2 million plus interest. He leaned back looking satisfied, looking like he had finally won a round. So you see, Elena, you might have put me in here, but I am taking you down with me. You need to drop the charges. You need to bail me out and pay off that debt, or you are going to be tied up in lawsuits for the next decade. He looked so proud of himself. He thought he had maneuvered me into a corner. He thought he had created a situation of mutually assured destruction. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a pang of emotion. Not anger, not hate. Pity. Deep, crushing pity for his stupidity. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single file folder. I slid it across the table. "You were always bad at details, Liam," I said softly. "You were always so focused on the big picture, the big payoff, that you missed the fine print." "What is this?" Liam asked, looking at the folder suspiciously. "Open it," I said. He flipped the folder open. Inside was a copy of the deed transfer for the Hamptons estate, specifically the section naming the buyer. Liam squinted, reading the legal text. The buyer name was not a Dubai tycoon. It was a legal entity, the Sterling Porter Jr. Trust, he read aloud. He looked up, confused. "What is this? Who is the Sterling Porter Jr. Trust?" I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. "You are right about one thing. Liam, I didn't check the title closely enough 6 months ago. I didn't know about your forgery then, but I found out about it the night before I sold the house. My forensic team flagged the lien when we were preparing the sale documents." Liam's smile faltered. "So, you knew." "I knew. I confirmed. And that is why I didn't sell the house to a stranger. I didn't sell it to a Dubai tycoon. That was a cover story. I told the broker to keep the press away." I took a deep breath, preparing for the blow that would shatter him. "I sold the house to a family trust. Liam." "A trust I established 24 hours ago. A trust designed to hold assets for my heir." "Heir?" Liam frowned. "You don't have an heir. We don't have children." I stood up slowly and unbuttoned my blazer. I placed a hand on my stomach. It was flat, still showing no signs of the life growing inside, but the gesture was unmistakable. Liam stared at my hand, his eyes widening in horror. "I am 8 weeks pregnant, Liam," I said. The color drained from his face completely, leaving him looking like a wax figure. "No," he whispered. "No, that is not possible. You said you were on the pill." "I stopped taking it 3 months ago," I said, "because we were talking about trying." "Remember, you said you wanted a family. You said you wanted a legacy. Well, here is your legacy." I watched the realization crash over him like a tidal wave. He wasn't just stealing from a bank. He wasn't just stealing from me. He had stolen from his own unborn child. "I sold the house to the trust," I explained. "The sole beneficiary of that trust is this baby. I am the trustee telling the bank that we are aware of the fraudulent lien and we are contesting it. But that is not the worst part for you, Liam." I looked at Ms. Vance. The district attorney nodded, understanding exactly where this was going. "Mr. Porter," Ms. Vance said, her voice sharp and professional, "by confessing that you forged your wife's signature to mortgage a home that is now the property of a trust for a minor, you have escalated your crimes significantly." Liam looked from me to the DA, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "You see, Liam," I said, sitting back down, "if you had just stolen from me, it would have been bad. But by securing a loan against a property that now belongs to a child you fathered, you have triggered a whole new set of sentencing guidelines." Ms. Vance opened a law book, marking a page with her pen. "Under federal law, obtaining a mortgage through identity theft, where the victim suffers a loss of over $1 million, carries a mandatory minimum. But because the proceeds were used for illegal gambling on unregulated crypto markets and the asset was effectively stripped from a dependent minor, we are adding charges of aggravated identity theft and child endangerment through financial negligence." Liam shook his head, tears welling up in his eyes. "I didn't know. I didn't know about the baby. Elena, you have to believe me. I would never have done it if I knew. But you did it, I said ruthlessly. You gambled away $2 million that should have paid for your son's education. You leveraged the roof over his head to buy Ethereum. I didn't sell the house to a stranger hoping they would sue me. Liam, I sold it to our son so that the bank would have to sue a baby. And do you know what happens when a bank realizes the fraudster is the father of the victim? They don't offer plea deals. Ms. Vance closed the file with a heavy thud. We were discussing a plea deal of 5 years for the embezzlement. Mr. Porter, Miss Vance said, but in light of this new confession regarding the mortgage fraud and the forgery involving the trust property, the offer is off the table. She looked him dead in the eye. We are now pursuing the maximum sentence for all counts. 15 years. Mr. Porter, with no possibility of parole for at least 15 years, Liam gasped. He looked at me, his eyes pleading desperate. Elena, please, the baby. Our baby. I can't be in jail when he is born. I can't miss his life. I stood up, picking up my bag. You are not going to miss his life, Liam. You are going to be a lesson in his life. A lesson, Liam whispered. Yes, I said, walking to the door. When he is old enough to ask where his father is, I won't lie to him. I will tell him the truth. I will tell him that his father was a man who loved money more than he loved his family. I will tell him that his father tried to sell the house he sleeps in to pay for a gambling debt. Elena, don't do this, Liam screamed, trying to stand up but being restrained by the cuffs. It is done, Liam, I said without looking back. I signaled to the guard to open the door. And one more thing, I said, pausing at the threshold. The trust has a clause. If the father is convicted of a felony against the estate, his parental rights are automatically terminated. You won't just be in jail. Liam, you will be a stranger. I walked out of the room, leaving him screaming my name, leaving him with the knowledge that his final gamble hadn't just cost him his freedom, it had cost him the only thing that really mattered. I walked down the hallway of the courthouse, my hand still resting on my stomach. 15 years. By the time he got out, my son would be in high school. He would be driving, he would be looking at colleges, and he would know that his mother was the one who protected him, the one who saw the wolf at the door and didn't just lock it, but trapped the wolf inside. I stepped out into the sunlight. The city was noisy and chaotic, but for the first time in days, I felt a profound sense of peace. The house was safe. The money was safe. My future was safe. And Liam Porter, the man who thought he could outsmart me, was about to learn that the house always wins, especially when the house belongs to Elena Sterling. The correctional facility was located just across the water, but it might as well have been on another planet. The air inside smelled of industrial cleanser and human misery, a sharp contrast to the Joe Malone diffusers that used to scent our penthouse. I walked through the metal detectors, my heels clicking against the linoleum floor, drawing the eyes of the guards and the other visitors. Most of the women here looked tired, worn down by the system and the men they loved. I did not look tired. I looked like the person who owned the building. I was wearing a white cashmere coat, pristine and bright, a deliberate choice against the gray drabness of the prison walls. I wanted to be the brightest thing Liam had seen in months, and the most unattainable. I sat down in the private visitation booth separated from the inmate side by a thick sheet of scratched plexiglass. I waited, keeping my back straight, my hands folded on my lap. When the door on the other side buzzed open, I almost didn't recognize him. Liam Porter, the man who had spent thousands of dollars on facials and hair treatments, looked like a skeleton draped in orange fabric. He had lost at least 20 pounds. His skin was sallow, pasty from the lack of sunlight, and his hair, which he used to fuss over for hours, was shaved close to his scalp, revealing the shape of his skull. He walked with a shuffle, his eyes darting around nervously, as if he expected to be attacked at any moment. He sat down and picked up the black receiver phone, his hands shaking uncontrollably. I watched his fingers. I noticed that his nails were bitten down to the quick. I picked up the phone on my side. "Elena?" he breathed. His voice was tinny, distorted by the cheap electronics. "Elena, you came?" I just looked at him studying the wreckage. It was fascinating in a morbid way, like looking at a car crash I didn't think you would come, Liam said, tears instantly welling up in his eyes, spilling over and running down his hollow cheeks. It has been 3 months, Elena. 3 months of hell. You have no idea what it is like in here. The noise, the food. I can't sleep. I am afraid to close my eyes. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against the glass. Please, Elena, he sobbed. Get me out of here. I know you have pull. I know you know the governor. Tell them I am sick. Tell them I need a mental health transfer. I will do anything. I will sign away my rights to the company. I will sign away the rights to the baby. Just please don't leave me here for 15 years. I will die in here. I listened to him beg. I listened to the man who once told me I was boring, the man who called me old, the man who told his mistress he was going to kick me out on the street. It is funny, Liam, I said, my voice calm and clear through the line. You are asking me to use my connections to save you. But 3 months ago, you told Sophie that my connections were the only reason I was successful. You said I was nothing without my father's name. Liam flinched as if I had slapped him. I was stupid, he stammered. I was arrogant. I didn't mean it. I was just trying to impress her. And now you are trying to impress me, I said. But you are failing at both. Liam, I looked around the small, depressing booth. I didn't come here to save you, Liam. I came here to say goodbye properly. The divorce was finalized this morning. You are officially a single man. Liam let out a low moan, a sound of pure despair. No, Elena, please. And I wanted to give you some good news. I continued, ignoring his pain. The company TechNexus, it is doing very well. We rebranded. We removed your name from the history books completely. The new CEO is fantastic. She doesn't steal. She doesn't lie. And the investors, the real ones, not the actors I hired, are very happy. You erased me, Liam whispered. You took everything. I didn't take anything. I corrected. You gave it away. You traded a life of loyalty and luxury for a few months of excitement and a lie. You made a bad investment, Liam. And this room, this orange suit, this cage, this is your return on investment. He looked at me, his eyes full of hate and sorrow and regret. Why did you really come? He asked, his voice trembling. Why torment me if you are so happy? Why be here? I leaned in closer to the glass, my eyes locking with his. Because I wanted to thank you, I said. He blinked, confused. Thank me? Yes, I said. A slight smile played on my lips. I realized something during this whole process. You used to tell me that you felt emasculated by my money. You said you wanted to be the provider. But the truth is, Liam, you never wanted to be a provider. You wanted to be a pet. I watched the realization dawn on him. You wanted a lifestyle you didn't earn. I said, you wanted the fancy dinners, the nice clothes, the trips to the Hamptons. But you didn't want to do the work. You wanted a woman to take care of you. You wanted a sugar mama. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Well, congratulations, Liam, I said softly. You finally got exactly what you wanted. I gestured to the guard standing by the door. I gestured to the prison walls. You wanted to be kept. And now you are kept. You have a roof over your head. You have clothes on your back. You have 3 meals a day delivered to you. You don't have to work. You don't have to pay bills. You don't have to worry about the stock market. It is all free. I stood up, smoothing my coat. The state of New York is now your sugar mama. Liam, and I calculated the cost of housing an inmate for 15 years. It is quite expensive. So in a way, you are still living off someone else's dime. It is the best sponsorship deal I could ever get you. Liam stared at me, his mouth open, unable to speak. The cruelty of the truth washed over him, silencing his pleas. Enjoy your retirement, darling. I said. I hung up the phone. The click was final, absolute. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to see him screaming behind the glass, silently mouthing my name. I didn't need to see him being hauled back to his cell. I had already forgotten him before I even reached the door. I stepped out of the prison facility, and the heavy steel doors clanged shut behind me, sealing the past inside. The air outside was cold and crisp, biting at my cheeks, but it tasted sweet. It was the taste of freedom. The sky over Manhattan was a brilliant, piercing blue. The clouds scattered like white paint across a canvas. I stood on the curb waiting for my driver. My hand instinctively went to my stomach. It had popped in the last month, a small, firm curve under my cashmere coat. I rubbed it gently, feeling the flutter of life inside. "You are going to be okay, little one," I whispered to the baby. "You are going to have a mother who takes no prisoners and a father who is nothing more than a cautionary tale." Thomas pulled the car up to the curb, hopping out to open the door for me. "Where to, Ms. Sterling?" he asked. "To Wall Street." "Thomas," I said, sliding into the back seat. "I have a board meeting at 2, and I hear there is a distressed asset in Silicon Valley that needs a new owner. I think I might buy it before dinner." Thomas smiled, watching me in the rearview mirror. "Back to business. Then always Thomas," I said. "Always business." As the car merged onto the highway, speeding towards the skyline of the city that I ruled, I looked out the window. The sun was reflecting off the glass towers, turning them into pillars of gold. The press had started calling me something new lately. They didn't call me the victim anymore. They didn't call me the scorned wife. They called me Queen Midas because everything I touched turned to gold, and everyone who crossed me turned to dust. I pulled out my phone and checked the stock market. The numbers were green. The arrows were pointing up. I was 32 years old. I was alone. I was pregnant, and I was unstoppable. The story of Liam Porter was over. The legend of Elena Sterling had just begun, and that is the story of how I turned a cheating husband into a distant memory and a business expense. Looking back now, I realize that the most dangerous thing Liam ever did was not sleeping with Sophie or stealing the money. The most dangerous thing he did was assume that because I was quiet, I was weak. He mistook my silence for submission and my generosity for blindness. He forgot that the hand that feeds you is also the hand that can starve you. I know many of you watching this might be in relationships where you feel small or where you have handed over the keys to your life to someone else, hoping they will drive you to a happy ending. But I am here to tell you that hope is not a strategy. Love is beautiful, and I still believe in it, but love is not a financial plan. The lesson here is simple, but it is written in ink that cannot be erased. Smart women do not fight with their fists, and they certainly do not fight with acid or violence. Those are the weapons of the desperate. Smart women fight with assets. We fight with the law. We fight with the undeniable power of ownership. Never under any circumstances surrender your financial independence to anyone, even your husband. A joint bank account is fine for groceries, but your freedom should always sit in an account that only you can access. A prenuptial agreement is not an act of distrust. It is an act of self-preservation. It is the seatbelt you wear, not because you plan to crash, but because you know the road is unpredictable. If I had not had control of the Sterling Trust, if I had not had the forensic accountants on speed dial, my story would have ended very differently. I would have been the crying victim on the news, not the victor. I would have been the one losing my home, not the one selling it. Money cannot buy happiness, but I can tell you from experience that it is much better to cry in a private limousine than on a public bus. It gives you options. It gives you the power to walk away with your head held high and your future secure. So I have a question for you, and I want you to answer honestly. If you were in my shoes sitting in that prison visitation room looking at the man you once loved, broken and begging for mercy, would you have caved? Would you have used your connections to get him a lighter sentence? Would you have felt sorry for the father of your child? Or would you have done exactly what I did and let him face the full weight of his consequences? If you support my decision to protect my child and my legacy by leaving him in that cell, I want you to comment the word queen below. Let me see how many strong women are ready to take back their power. And if you enjoyed watching a narcissist get exactly what he deserved, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I have many more stories from Wall Street to share, and trust me, the boardroom is just as vicious as the bedroom. My name is Elena Sterling, and remember, in the game of life, never bet against yourself. I will see you in the next video.